Okay, so we've got the Simpson washing machine, and this is part 2 of the video. In the first part, what I did was I showed you how to open this unit and change the capacitor. So the Simpson washing machine, this is a Spirit 550. It had an issue with agitation where it would agitate and stop. In the first part of the video, we opened it and we measured the capacitor motor, and it was something like 50% of the original capacitance value. So we've changed the capacitor, and you can refer to the first video, and the machine sort of agitates better. However, it does intermittently stop. So after looking at eBay and looking online, we've ordered a motor control unit, and in there it stated that if the capacitance of the motor, the motor capacitor, had reduced in capacitance, what it does is it creates a higher motor draw as the motor is turning left and right, and higher motor draw means higher current draw, and as a result this device here heats up the motor control unit, and possibly you've got some dry joints inside. So we're now going to replace this control unit, and in order to do that we need to make sure the power's off, turn the taps off, and we're going to take off 1, 2, 3 screws. And what I've got here is the actual motor control unit part number. So if you have a look at Electrolux, it's got here AMD 105, it's got 628 200 105, and it's got 240 volts, 5 amps max load. And this is the accompanying piece of paper that came with it. And I'm just going to hold it there so people can read it. And on there, obviously this part is designed for many different Simpson washing machines. And it's got here, if fitting this control unit to a machine which has a wire marked ID going to the original control unit, fit the ID wire to FB on the capacitor. So I suspect FB may be feedback. When fitting this control unit to models, it's got some certain model numbers. It should be fitted to the metal barrier using the screw and clip supplied as shown. And here it is. And you can see it's sort of there. If the barrier does not already have the necessary drill a 4mm hole, 80mm down from the cutout in the top back edge of the barrier. So you can see here it is, and there's 80mm, and you drill a hole. Hopefully with this one here, I've had a look, the wire color codings match, and it should just be simply a matter of disconnecting and connecting the new motor control unit. So what we've done here is we have taken the 3 screws at the back off. 1, 2, 3. I've got my motor control unit here. I've got my instructions here. And I'm just going to show you the original motor control unit. It sits in like so, and I've just loosened that screw there. You don't have to remove it, and in doing so this can just lift up, and we can also unclick it. If I turn it to a side view, you will notice here it's got the little clip, and you push that back and pull the connector out. Now, before I proceed to do that, I just want to talk about, you need to make sure that this is done correctly. And looking on the instructions, it says, if fitting this control unit to a machine which has a wire marked ID going to the original control unit, fit the ID wire to FB on the capacitor. Now, when we looked at this, I wasn't sure, to me it seems like FB stands for feedback, and it took a little while to understand what this paragraph was talking about. So we went back to the diagram, and we've got a wire that's C, and if you have a look, we've got a wire that's FB, and this FB wire, if I follow it, it already goes to the capacitor there. So this particular machine already has a FB, I suspect feedback, to know maybe from the motor, and that's the motor capacitor, some sort of feedback for the unit. So it's already there. Now the next wire is an FR. Then we've got a black wire which doesn't seem to have any details on it, and lastly we've got this other wire which doesn't have anything on there. So clearly this particular machine doesn't have any ID wire, but if it did, that ID wire would have to be connected to the capacitor. In our case, we have an FB wire there, and if I compare this new unit with the old one in terms of the color coding, if I put it side by side, we've got the colors of the harness match. Now, the other thing that you may think about is, do you use these new wires that came with a new part and replace the wires with the existing part? Well, in this case, there's no need to, because the wires are still in good condition. They have the factory label, and if the wire was overheated, it would discolor and you'd probably see it as being melted. And the other reason why I wouldn't be changing it in this instance is because this particular wire is just a part and is generic, and there's actually no labeling on the wire itself. And at the other end, you've got some spade connectors. So this probably suits a machine, looking at the diagram, machines which have like terminal blocks. In our case, our wires go into the electromechanical controller, and there's no spade connectors. Everything is connected, and I don't see a need to actually cut these wires and join them again in this particular model. So all we're going to do now is we're going to remove this motor control unit by, if I just take a side view, I'm going to pull on that little plastic here and pull this connector out, and then put my new motor controller unit in and put it back. So let me do that in the next part. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this motor control unit, and in order to do that, it's a matter of lifting that little plastic like so, and then I've just pulled it out. So once again, it plugs in like so, and that little plastic with your thumb or a screwdriver, and you just take it out, and then the machine's taken out. And just remember that that little ridge locks with that tab, because this could go the other way, but you have to make sure the ridge goes with the tab. So now I'm going to bring my new part here, and I'm going to unplug it. So once again, you put your thumb there, and this new one is a bit more. Okay, there we go. I've taken it off. I'm looking at the color coding. So now I'm going to go over here, and if you have a look, just line up the pins, and just remember the ridge matches with the locking part. And then I'm going to now click it in, and if you have a look on the back, it's clicked in. On the front, it's clicked in on this side, and on this side, it's clicked in. So it's plugged in, and then it's a matter of putting this unit back and matching up with the screw on the bottom like so, and it sits in there. And then with a screwdriver, you just gently, you don't have to over tighten this, it's just to hold it in place, and you just turn this like so, and then that device then sits in there. So, and the next part of this will be to put the cover back on. So then to put the cover back on, you just hold this like so, and just making sure the wires are all clear. Just making sure it's pushed down, it's not impeding anywhere. This is plugged in, that's in. And then I just like so. And then we're going to replace 1, 2, 3 screws. Okay, so we've put the screws back on. It's got the motor control unit inside. The machine's plugged back in, the taps are turned on, and we're just going to give it a run just to see how it performs. So that's the final step. Okay. So we're letting the machine fill up with water, and so we've changed the capacitor, we've put a new motor control unit in. The capacitor was certainly half the capacitance, and also this dial would move and it wouldn't agitate. So we changed the motor control unit, but we've also just realized right now the lid's closed and it's not filling with water. Now if I open it, do it again, that tells me that the micro switch that's connected with the cam to the lead, that $2 little micro switch, is probably on its way out. So that's another thing you should look at replacing, is a little door switch, because if I do this, so then I do it again, so it clearly is to do with triggering the switch, and over 20 years of use, that little on-off switch that controls the power to the whole machine, the contactors wear out. So that's another thing to consider replacing. Okay, so you can hear it agitating with the new motor control unit. Okay, I've closed. Okay, it's stopped. Okay, now. There we go. So that is a switch. I can clearly just see that now. So it's obviously agitating. The motor control unit's working. And it seems to be doing a good agitation. And then if I lift it up and I gently close the lid, see, it hasn't turned on. And that's because that little micro switch here in the corner, the black switch here, which is common in microwaves and a lot of appliances, is on its way out. So I'm just going to gently, so that tells me that the micro switch is also on its way out. So there you have it. Refer to the first video on how to change a capacitor, and it was on its way out. And then this video which shows you the motor control unit, and just whilst doing all this we discovered that the door micro switch is also on its way out as well. I may open this in a sec and just see the cam action with the door